Today we can go on to volume 49C, that is 49 part 3. Volume 49 is a special volume, it's about the life of the Buddha. So this is the third part, 49C. And remember the last stop was entitled Mahapadana Sutta. A sutta from the Digha Nikaya, D14, and the sutta talks about Vipassī Buddha. So this sutta also talks about Vipassī Buddha, but the Mahapadana Sutta is a very long sutta. In the center of the sutta you have the story of Vipassī. It's as if that the whole Mahapadana Sutta is preparing us to learn of the life history and teaching how our Buddha Gautama became enlightened. Now today's sutta is called Vipassī Sutta, that is called on Vipassī. That is the name of the Buddha who lived 91 years, 91 world cycles ago. But this is not from the Digha Nikaya, it's from the Samyutta Nikaya. Now the Samyutta Nikaya, as we know, often teaches about meditation, Buddhist doctrines, and this is from S12.4. And the theme here is that all the Buddhas discover the same liberating truth. In fact, the same liberating truth is the law of dependent arising and dependent ending. Now, this term we are very familiar with, Paticca Samuppada. I have a feeling this term, Paticca Samuppada, although it talks just about arising, it also includes the ending. One reason for this belief is because we don't see the technical term in the Buddhist text, in the early text, for the word ending. There is no Pali word, specific Pali word in the suttas for dependent ending, although we can guess from back formation, as the scholars would say. We can use, for example, Paticca Nirodha. Right? So, of course, once we use such word, we put a star in front of it. That means it is what's called a neologism. It doesn't exist in the Buddhist text, but it's possible to create this word meaningfully from the Pali. So, as I said many times before, when we study early Buddhism, remember, usually there are no technical terms. In other words, a term like dependent arising can also include dependent ending. Now, another interesting point we need to know is that this Vipassī Sutta is the first of a series of 7 suttas in the same chapter, chapter 12 of the Samyutta, S12. So this 7 suttas deal with each of the 7 Buddhas. So S12.4 is about Vipassī Buddha, S12.5 is about Sikhi Buddha who lived 31 years ago, 31 world cycles ago. And then S12.6 is about Vessabhu Buddha who also lived around the same time, 31 world cycles ago. So you have Vipassī Buddha, the 7th Buddha from our Gautama. And then Sikhi Buddha is number 6. Vessabhu Buddha is number 5. And then we have the 4th Buddha from our own Buddha, Kakusanda Buddha, who lived in the present world cycle, which we are in now. But he's a past Buddha. And then we have the 3rd past Buddha, that is Kona Gamana Buddha, also in our world cycle. And then the previous Buddha, Kassapa Buddha, the 2nd Buddha, 2nd past Buddha. And then you have S12.10, it is called Mahasakyamuni Gautama Sutta. This is about our own Buddha. So we have 7 Buddhas, all having this very special sutta of their own. Although we say special, all the 7 suttas have the same subject in almost identical terms, and that is dependent arising and of course dependent ending. Now the question is, why do we have such repetitions for all the 7 Buddhas? This is the oral tradition, the early Buddhist textual tradition of showing that all the Buddhas discover the same liberating truth. We can call this truth by another term is something like conditionality, if you like, or even dependent conditionality, cause-effect. Okay? So early Buddhism is a very simple, very clear, and very healing teaching, because it tells us about causes and effects. When the problem occurs, not to blame anyone, but to look for the causes and the conditions that bring about the situation. When we say conditions, always with a plural, it means there are many causes, many effects. Causes lead to effects, effects become causes for more effects, and so on like that. The next interesting point you must note is that we do have this description of the dependent arising in the Mahapadana Sutta, also in D14, where Vipassana reflects on the 10 links, not 12 links, but here they're all 12 links. We can say that 12 links is the maximum number of links in dependent arising, beginning to end, so to speak. Whereas in the case of Vipassana, there are only 10 endings. So it starts with ignorance and then goes on to name and form, and then it goes to consciousness to name and form. It goes in a cycle, a loop. So the 10 links, I think, one of the users of the 10 link dependent arising is to show that at some point there is this cycle, or recycle even if you like, of consciousness creating name and form, which in turn creates consciousness, goes round and round, and that's how we go on in our daily life. Okay? But in the Vipassana Sutta, we have 12 links. So is there a contradiction here? Not at all. Because you must remember, the Buddha teaches for 45 years, and whatever is presented to us in the suttas are selected aspects of the Buddha's teachings. So here, in other words, we see a variety of the Buddha's presentation of dependent arising. There are many forms of dependent arising, some 6 links, 7 links, even very short ones. So depending on what the Buddha wishes to teach. So there are different aspects of the links being used. So let us look at this sutta, which will give us a good idea on the nature of the awakening of all the other 6 Buddhas, including our own Gautama Buddha. Okay, the translation starts on page 11. The discourse on Vipassana S 12.4. The Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi. These bhikshus occurred to the Blessed One Vipassana, the Arahat, fully self-awakened before his awakening, when he was still an unawakened Bodhisattva. So here the Buddha is telling a story of the past, like a Jataka, if you like. So now this is very interesting, because in telling this kind of story, the Buddha is also relating his own experience, in other words. So in a sense, he's trying to tell us that as a Buddha, his experience is nothing new. It is the kind of experience all Buddhas would experience. And this makes good sense, because it would be really difficult to imagine the different Buddhas realize different things over time, because the truth is basically the same, so to speak. So Vipassana Buddha reflects in this way when he sees the Bodhisattva Vipassana looking at the world. He reflects, alas, this world has fallen into difficulty. It is born, it ages, it dies, it falls away, it is reborn. And then the traveling starts. Here it is in reverse. It starts with number 12, the last link. Yet it does not know or understand the escape from this suffering, that is decay and death. Right? So here is a very interesting way how ignorance is defined. This is the link for ignorance, but here it is defined as not knowing what suffering is, not knowing what decay and death is, basically not knowing what the Four Noble Truths are. Then, so he's kind of reflecting here. Okay, we have a kind of an idea what goes on in the Bodhisattva's mind before his awakening. So Vipassana reflects now, when will it understand the escape from this suffering, that is decay and death? So when will it, the world? So here Vipassana is saying, how can I help the world, the people? Here world means the people, beings, get out of their suffering. Right? So here again, we need to remind ourselves there are three meanings of world. First meaning is the physical world, okasa loka, the world of time and space. And number two, you have what's called satta loka, the world of beings. And the third is the most important, sankhara loka, the world of formations. This is the world that we create for ourselves, our own virtual world, so to speak. Okay, then next link number 11, the section 3. Yeah? Then bhikshus, okay, now again we've got to find out who's talking here. This is Sakyamuni Buddha, Gautama Buddha, telling us a story. Then bhikshus, it occurred to the Bodhisattva Vipassana, when whatever exists, is there decay and death? What is the condition for decay and death? This bhikshus, on account of the Bodhisattva Vipassana's wise attention, there is the breakthrough by wisdom thus. On account of birth, on account of birth there is decay and death. Birth is the condition for decay and death. So there's this question answer, this reflecting, reporting the mental process in the Bodhisattva Vipassana's mind. Notice the key word here is wise attention. Here means reflecting to the root of things. This is reflection on the 12 links. Now, the Bodhisattva Vipassana goes on to the 10th link. So he reflects, when what exists is their birth. What is the condition for birth? And then he reflects and says, oh, it is existence. And then on account of existence, there is birth. Birth or existence is the condition for birth. Then what about existence? When what exists, is there existence? Answer is clinging. When there is clinging, there is existence. So here we've got to think a little special here. We've got to think backwards. The Buddha is tracing how the 12 links work in a counter way, in other words. Okay, this is called the counter cycle, if you like. Okay, a counter cycle means the dependent arising going backwards, in other words. So another way we can think of this is we go forward with a clinging leads to existence. Right? So in other words, here the Vipassana identifies the problem and he says, okay, what caused this? And goes back. What caused this? It goes back like that. Okay. So now he asks, what about clinging? What is the condition that brings about clinging? And he reflects, oh, it is craving, right? And then what brings about craving? Now I'm simplifying the whole cycle. So from what does craving arise? Craving arises from feeling, right? This is section, just before section 8, end of section 7. And then what about feeling? Feeling arises from contact, right? This is section 8.2. or end of section 8. Contact means the sense impact, sense experiences. The eye there is eye contact. That means the eye experiences something. There's ear contact, the ear hears something. And what about contact? How does it arise? Okay, so this section 9 that he reflects is, okay, this contact arises from the 6 sense doors and 6 sense bases. How do the 6 sense bases arise? The 6 senses plus the mind. They arise from name and form. So name and form, in other words, seeing things out there in the world, and then kind of ideas are formed. So there is sound in the world, then we have this concept of sound, right? There are sights, colors, shapes. We have the concept, idea of color, and so on. So this we have name given to the form. There is form and there is name. Okay. How does name and form arise? So here again, the Bodhisattva Vipassana reflects is, it is consciousness. This consciousness is a very basic idea of awareness of what's going on around us. And then, what about consciousness? How does consciousness arise? Okay, this is the difficult part. So here the Bodhisattva Vipassana says, it is sankhara, volitional formations. It's something like the will to live. It's something a little deeper than consciousness, if you like. But here again, there's nothing technical. The Vipassana Buddha simply said there's something in the mind that makes us do this. And then finally, what makes us do this? These formations, these sankhara, sometimes translated formations also. Now it comes to rock bottom, you can say in a sense, the ultimate cause, if you like, just in a manner of speaking. Okay, it is ignorance. Ignorance brought it all about. See, so notice there's nothing technical here. This is the big difference between early Buddhism and, for example, say compared to the Vedic religion or the teachings of the Upanishads. They tend to give big names to certain things and just stop there. So now we stop at ignorance, right? So in other words, here Vipassana Buddha says, okay, that we have now come to the root of the problem. It all starts with ignorance. So I call this a counter cycle because it goes backwards. All right. I reserve the word reverse it for kind of we move the other way around. Okay, in the case of a dependent ending. Okay, so we have just completed looking at what is called dependent arising counter cycle, or the counter cycle version of dependent arising. Now we have the essential dependent arising, the basic form, which is the standard form or the forward cycle. So you have forward cycle, counter cycle. The forward cycle is the one we are very familiar with. Okay, so here, in other words, theoretically speaking, how do all these problems, suffering arise? It comes from ignorance. Right? So we start with ignorance. This is section 14. So it's all in one section here, very short. It gives us the 12 links, everything summarized very neatly for us. And you have even the Pali given to us, avijja paccaya sankhara, very famous verse. So with ignorance as condition, there are volitional formations. Because of ignorance, there is this idea or there is this mind that creates things. When we are ignorant, when we see something, we form all kind of ideas about it. It starts from there. It's a hazy kind of idea. And normally this occurs through body, speech and mind, or the 3 doors, especially the mind. With volitional formation as condition, there is consciousness. Right? So in other words, when we go on doing this, we become more aware on a different level. It's as if we project this idea out into the world in 5 ways, as sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. And behind all this is the mind, thinking. With consciousness as condition, there is name and form. So we have this consciousness, the 6 kinds of consciousnesses, the consciousness of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Take for example the eye consciousness. What does it do? Eye consciousness is conscious of form, light, shapes. Right? So whenever it sees form, light, shapes, it forms, it's conscious of something out there. And then the ear conscious of sound and so on. So from consciousness comes name and form. What do we do the moment we say see something, or hear something, or smell something, or taste something, or touch something? We want to name it. We see the form out there. Form means the thing out there. We want to name it. Because if we do not name it, we just do not know what to do. When you meet someone the first time and you're talking, you want to know the person's name. After that, you want to know what he does, right? So you have name and form there, nama rupa, okay, name and form. So we give a name to it, and then we keep it in our minds, like a record. And next time we see this thing, we have the name in our mind, and then we see the form out there, we link it again. With name and form as condition, there are the 6 sense spaces. So we are not at first aware of those senses, but now we become more aware. We have this idea of something as called sight. This is very easy to understand if you imagine a baby, a newborn baby, to use a Singapore slang, blur, doesn't know anything. So we have to help this baby grow up with the kind of cultivate the senses. That's why we give this little baby a lot of toys. And toys are colorful, they make all kinds of sound, and they have lights. And this is to stimulate the senses, to awaken the senses of the baby. The baby doesn't have all these senses. It's just some very rudimentary sense of smell. It's kind of very attached to the mother's smell usually, and so on. So that senses evolve, right? So here we have consciousness, name and form, and then the 6 sense spaces. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind have fully evolved. Now once you have eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, the 6 sense spaces, what do? Their job is to experience sense objects. When the eye sees an object, that's called contact. There is eye contact. Eye, form, consciousness. That is a triangle of experience. Result, eye contact. Eye contact in simple word is seeing. Okay? So when there is contact, what happens when you see something? There is feeling. Here feeling, pati sanvedeti. Feeling means to know something about it, to evaluate it, to decide, do I like it? Is it pleasant? If it is pleasant, I will like it. If it is unpleasant, I don't like it. If I can't make up whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, it's neutral, then I will ignore it. So this is how we begin to connect with things. And then with feeling arises craving. Right? So if it is something we see as nice, meaning in the past we experienced that it was good to us, so when we see a similar situation we say, oh okay, I like this. So we want more of it, that's craving. And craving also means dislike, because whatever you see doesn't give you that same idea or stimulus, you try to push it away. That's the opposite of craving, hatred, repulsion. And then there is, you don't have experience of this thing before you, then that is something, then it's ignorance, you ignore it. Right? You don't know what it is, so you just ignore it. So, from craving, there is clinging. So in other words, when you like something, you hold on to it, grasping, clinging. Okay? And from clinging, with clinging as condition, there is existence. Meaning, sometimes this word power is translated as becoming, existence, becoming. You become what you desire. So let's say if you like something, there's a lot of greed, then you become that greed, so to speak. With existence, there is birth. So you keep on, with clinging, there is existence. With existence, there is birth. Okay? So in other words, when you go on behaving in a certain way, you will be reborn. Your mind will continue in the same way. And when you have birth, you also must have decay and death. They go together. And with that, there also follows sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, and despair. And this is how the whole mass of suffering arises. So here the Buddha, the Bodhisattva in this case, has found the answer. Now I know how all this suffering arises. So it says, arising, arising. Thus, bhikshus, regarding what was unheard before, there arose in me vision, there arose knowledge, there arose wisdom, there arose insight, there arose light. So this is where the Bodhisattva becomes Buddha, becomes enlightened. But there's something that he must do. So what I've just read to you just now is the forward cycle of dependent arising. So now the Bodhisattva reflects again. Once he knows the forward cycle, dependent arising, he also knows how to break it, the reverse cycle. So, notice the last part. It says, section 16, then bhikshus, this occurred to the Bodhisattva Vipassi. When what exists not, is there no decay and death? When there is no birth. So in other words, when birth ends, decay and death ends. And then when so after that, when birth ends, existence ends. When there's no existence, there's no clinging. If no clinging, there's no craving. When craving ends, there's no feeling. And then no contact. So you go backwards. Then the six sense bases don't arise. And because there's no six sense bases, there's also no name and form. Without name and form, there's no consciousness. Without consciousness, there no volitional formation or sankhara, and no sankhara, ignorance is also removed. So that's how we overcome this whole mass of suffering. It's all overcome now, and this is called the ending, nirodha. This ending, of course, is another word for nirvana. So there you are, how you have a dependent ending, the whole cycle of ending suffering. So finally, Vipassi Buddha says, ending, nirodha, thus bhikshus, regarding what was unheard before, there arose in me vision, there arose knowledge, there arose wisdom, there arose insight, there arose light. So here the Buddha is saying, now I am Buddha, now I understand all these things. So this is a very short description of the nature of awakening for all the Buddhas. There's a lot of value in this kind of teaching, lots of the basic ideas in psychology, mental healing and so on. So nothing magical, nothing mystical, nothing to pray about, something to understand and to practice and realize for ourselves. And this is what all the Buddhas realize. And this is the Vipassi Buddha, the Vipassi Sutta, S 12.4. Now we end with a short reflection. Our purpose of becoming Buddhists is, of course, must be to study the Dharma so that we understand the Buddha's teaching, and by understanding the Buddha's teaching we free ourselves from suffering, become happy and helpful and useful to others and benefit them in whatever way we can. Reflecting in this way is very good karma. By such good karma may we be empowered with the wisdom, and the courage to aspire to attain stream winning in this life itself. By the same token, by the power of the three jewels, let us send out our loving kindness to ourselves, to our loved ones, and to all those people who are seeking awakening in this life itself. And also, by the power of the three jewels, let us send out our loving kindness to all those who are lost, who are still not sure of themselves. May they find the true teaching in this life itself too. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.